Hey everybody, this is the Patzer, and this is the chess.com puzzle for May 8th, 2019. What's tantalizing about this puzzle from the get-go is that if you take a look, you'll see that black is one move away from mating the white king, and that move is this, and there we have checkmate. But as is always the case with chess.com puzzles, white is to move, so White is wondering, well, so what do we do here to thwart black's intentions? It's got to be dramatic. It's probably going to involve check because check is the only way to keep that bishop in place and not mating the king. So not surprisingly, this is the move that chess.com suggests. And the next move, not surprisingly by black, is to take the queen, and the pawn takes the rook, and that's the solution. And of course, we can all imagine that from here on out, the pawn is going to get promoted to a queen, and so the white will now have a queen back, and black will now be missing a rook. And despite having all of these pawns, things are not going to look good for black, and that's the case. So let's take a look at how the Stockfish engine plays itself in this situation. It does exactly what chess.com suggests. It checks, and the Stockfish engine agrees that the rook will take the queen, the pawn will take the rook, and it'll take a while. And interestingly, despite white's efforts to clean up the board of all of these extra pawns, who are always, of course, dangerous possibilities for spoiling white's chances, in the end, despite taking so many pawns, in fact, there's only one pawn left, as you can see, white doesn't actually have to promote a pawn here. It manages to win in 32 moves without promoting a pawn, at least not promoting a pawn aside from that one pawn that created the queen again in the first place. Now, I was curious to know what would have happened if instead of, well, let me show you. Okay, so from this position, what would happen if black decided to move the king and not take the queen with the rook? And what I really wanted to know, because I didn't expect black was going to be able to survive this situation, because the queen's going to take the rook. But interestingly, this position, despite the placement of the white queen being totally different from the way chess.com envisions this puzzle, you still have the board more or less the way it was in the old situation. It's just that the queen now, the white queen, is at the bottom of the board instead of at the top of the board. So I thought, how long can black last this way from this position? What's involved? How hard is it going to be? And here's what I found out. And interestingly, white is, busily cleaning up all those black pawns. And here, what I thought was cool was that white sees that the black king is getting close to that lone pawn down there at A3. And of course, once the king can get rid of that pawn, it can promote its own pawn at A4. So white does the kamikaze move here and says, okay, take me. I don't care because I'm going to get promoted. And weirdly, in this situation, black, does another promotion. So there are actually two white promotions here, two white queens on the board, and that didn't take long. So, that produced a win in 28 moves. So, obviously, Stockfish was correct in not moving the king in that initial position instead of instead of just going ahead and taking the white queen with the rook, because under the conditions that chess.com thinks the puzzle would play out, it still takes white 32 moves to win that way. Whereas if the king moves instead of the rook, it's 28 moves. So it's four fewer moves. Not really a big deal. Anyway, that's the puzzle for May 8th. This is the Patzer. Get out from behind the 8 ball, and I'll talk to you soon.